Hi friends, today I'm playing with, I wanted to draw some of these like wine grapes. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of sketch them out. They're fairly easy because it's just really a grouping of circles. Looking for my, I'm going to use my Blackwing pencil. I love these because this eraser #1 is replaceable. So you just open up the little prongs and put another eraser in there. And the other thing that's really nice is the eraser is really thin, so I can get into some really smaller little areas. And then I just order more of these erasers because I always end up with pencils laying around that have no erasers. All right, so that's what I'm going to be using. Oh, and my paper I'm using today is the Artisto. It's a 140-pound cold press, but it is the larger sheets. So this is a great beginner's paper. I love it. This is what I predominantly paint on. I do absolutely love the Meeden, which this isn't 100% cotton. One second, I'm going to grab this. If you do want 100% cotton, these Meeden pads are fabulous. They're a little bit more than the Artisto, but these are fabulous. They have great texture and so forth too. But I'm doing the Artisto today. The other thing I'll be using is, let me grab it. I'll be using these are my brushes that hopefully will be coming out this summer. If you want some information, I put all my supplies and everything in the description below. So I have a link if you just want to get on the interest list and check out what they are. So that's that one. So excited with the hot pink. I've got my paint palette here that I'll mix some colors in. And today I'm using my MeiLiang palette. If you have this one, totally fine. The only difference with this one is it has a row of metallics. So it's the same palette. You got your warms, your cools, your neutrals here. Same thing. It's just a little bit bigger because it has those metallics, which you know I love. All right, so I'm going to have my eraser here handy, and I'm not sure yet. I kind of drew out the design I wanted, and then I felt like these are the other Artisto pads, by the way. These are the journal ones, which I love, but I found a few sheets I hadn't used yet. This whole thing is pretty full. And these are great too, but I kind of sketched out my design. So it's almost like, I use this design a lot. It's like a triangle, which I like that type of pattern for my flowers, for all different things. So I kind of did a little triangle type of pattern, and I'm just going to resketch those on to my larger paper here. What I'll start with, I think, is, and you can do these grapes however you want. They're, you know, you can't really mess these up too much, I don't think. So I'm just going to start drawing them in, and then I'll start kind of tucking them in here and there, different sizes. I love grapes. I love painting them. I painted several paintings for a winery years ago, and it was a lot of fun. The colors are just fabulous. I can't drink wine. Wine does not like my stomach, so I paint them now instead. So now I'm just kind of tucking some in, maybe make some smaller ones. There we go. And then I'm going to draw I think the hardest part of grapes always for me, for some reason, it's so weird, is the leaves. They're kind of funky. So I'll show you how I do mine. And let's see, let's do one leaf right here just so I can show you. So the grape leaves tend to kind of have be comprised of 3 leaves of sorts. So that's how I have found is easiest for me to draw them. And then coming in here and back out again. They're really interesting, actually. and tuck that in, and then I'll go in with my eraser and just erase some of that. Use my old brush. I think I've had this since, I want to say college, but that would be a long time ago, but it's loose. I use it just to brush away my, all my little eraser pieces. So that's kind of tucked in there. Maybe come out like this, like that. And then I'll add another leaf over here. Trying to keep that triangle type thing. So I want my end grape to end up down here. But tucking them in, big grapes, small grapes, all different sizes. I try not to get too caught up in these grapes, but sometimes I can get a little too complicated. And then just making sure my last little grape ends up right there. I'll just place that there. Keep going. Yes, I know this would be a great place if I knew how to edit. I could fast forward through this for you guys. Making sure you keep your grapes some different sizes just for interest. There we go. All right. Even my grapes are kind of triangular, aren't they? Almost done here. Maybe tuck some in here so they're kind of behind. And that's good enough for these purposes. So I've got my vein of my other one, and then what I'm going to do is come out here with the leaf, come out here with a part of the leaf, and we've got our tip here. Okay, so let's start with this, and then in, out, like that. They really are quite interesting, aren't they? There we go. Okay, now for the color palette. The color palette I'm going to use, let me just grab this here. It's said to try and use, you know, in school I always learned, try and use 3 colors, two are complementary, 1 is an accent, but that's always really hard for me, especially in grapes, because there's blues and red violets and beautiful purples in grapes, and I want to use them all. So this purple right here, let's see, let me give you that color. I think that is just the violet, but I want to use like a red violet as well. Okay, there's a violet, and then here's the red violet, so I'm going to use that as well for my grapes. I might even sneak in just a tad of that, maybe. We'll see. But the complementary color, excuse me, the red violet would be these greens. So I want to put those in because I think that'll be really pretty. Sometimes I've even added green into the grapes themselves. By the way, I have my wash and rinse palette. Very important in watercolors to not only wash your brush, but to also rinse it so it's really nice and clean. And the way I can tell I got all that paint out is I just dab it on my cloth there, my paper towel, so I can see that I got all the paint out. Okay, so I think that'll be my palette. I probably won't use that one. I might use just the tiniest bit. Don't quite want that one. Let's see. Nah, I would want a little deeper blue. I think could be really pretty, like almost a blue raspberry type color. Not raspberry, blackberries. So that might be pretty too. And that I mixed turquoise and Prussian blue. Okay, so let's go in. My favorite way to paint is always kind of layers. So I want to start with my lightest color. So what I'm going to do is I've got this violet in here, and this is a mix. This is going to be a mix of about 80% water, 20% pigment. And then I'm tapping off, and I'm going to go in and just kind of go through and apply. So see, that is even too dark. I don't want to start that dark because I'm going to work with some layers. So let's get a lighter version of that and just start. And I'm leaving some white space in here too. So make sure you do that because that's interesting. When you're thinking about like composition and how you're putting your colors, keep in mind your white space is also a part of that. So even though it's the negative space and it's maybe you know, you're not actually painting it, it still takes up space. So keep in mind how that white space plays out as well. So right here, I've kind of got an upside down triangle almost. 2 wide parts here, 1 smaller part up here. So something I think about. Then keep going in. I've got, again, this very watered down version. And I might even go into that red violet and start laying some of that down. I painted a lot of these for a local winery, and it was really fun. As well, I love those complementary colors of purple and greens together. I think it's so pretty. They're definitely contrasting or complementary colors. So an interesting fun fact, contrasting colors can be those colors that are complementary, opposite on the color wheel, but not all complementary colors. Okay, let me get this right. Contrasting colors can also be like using a dark purple and a light purple. That would be a contrast, but not all complementary colors are contrasting. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to keep going. A little bit more of that purple. Now I did make that one a little bit darker. So take note of those white spaces. Like so. And you could actually even tap in there with some darker hues while it's wet. But we are going to do some layering. So these are dry already, so that's not going to spread so much. So this is a glaze I'm putting over. I'm just using a little bit darker value of that purple. And then let's get some of our pink here and just keep going. So maybe if my light source is coming from this direction, it's hitting and creating light on the right side of a lot of these. Now I'm tapping in here with some darker purple into this red violet. So I've got some fun little mixes going on there. And then rinsing, tapping my brush off, and kind of softening that line. That's just me. I like soft lines. That's one of the reasons I love watercolors. So I just go in and kind of soften those up. And I'm going to keep going here using some different values. So this is a little darker than the others. So when I have grapes next to each other, I kind of try and use different values. And I feel pretty good about the value colors that I've got in here, these light values. Pardon me, I've got just a little bit of a scratchy throat today. So now I feel like I could go in and start adding in some darker values. So let's grab some more of that purple in that MeiLiang palette. Ooh, look at how pretty that one is. That one's really pretty. So I've got more on my brush. And then I'm tapping off. If you need to, tap onto your paper towel so you're not going in with a fully loaded brush here. And let's go in and start adding in some darker values. Look how beautiful that is. And I'm going in next to the ones that are not wet because I don't want all of this to just blend into a big puddle, right? So I'm just taking my time going in and adding in darker values. Now I want to get a little bit of that red violet because it's such a beautiful color. Reminds me a lot of the Quin Magenta. And tapping off, and now I'll go in and start adding that in. So I have a little bit more water on my brush than I'd like. So remember, you can tap off on your paper towel. And going in, I might even glaze over that one. Just adding in a little bit more pigment. One here. So look at the interest already that you can get just by adding in some darker values. It really gives you this feeling of some are tucked in, some are not. And now I might even go over with some of these with a little bit of a glaze. So I'm glazing over that first layer. And what it's going to do is give you some of that purple and some of this beautiful color over it, which I love. There we go. And now how about if we add just a tiny bit of that turquoisey color? I'm dying to get that in there. Look how pretty that is. I'm telling you, these are some colorful grapes, but that's how I paint everything, guys. I'm gonna lighten, so I rinsed my brush and I've got a thirsty brush, meaning it's barely damp, and I'm gonna go over that. Now I might just mix in a tiny bit of my purple with that, but I like that color. I like having a little bit of that blue in there. I think it's really pretty. Maybe the ones that are tucked inside that you can't see the whole thing, I think is really pretty. They look just a little bit darker in color. So interesting. And we're still going to go in and add some more layers here too. Then I'll wet my brush, dry it off, push and pull, just using the very tip of my brush to kind of blend that out. I like that one. Just kind of blending that. There we go. So see how that blended? And let's see. I almost felt like this one last little grape was kind of special. Okay. Leaving my white space. Going in with some of that purple, maybe tapping in a little damp on damp. And we got one little tiny grape here I think I'll do in a deeper blue. Let me grab a little bit of that blue. Where'd it go? Here we go. And it gives this illusion that it's tucked inside. Maybe right here, there's one tucked in there. And do this one here. So I'm again starting with those lighter washes, and then you can always go darker. That's always the easy part. Maybe color this one in that's behind here, kind of tucked in. I'm going to use a little bit more of that red violet. Love that color almost as much as I love my Quin Magenta, guys. And let's see, what color should we do this one up here? Should we do it a dark purple? Why not? Leave a tiny bit of white highlight there. And now you can just start playing with some glazes. So I'm using still a light wash, but I'm glazing over some of those other light grapes. And now just rinsing and washing my brush and tapping it off. So it's, as they call, thirsty. And we can go in and pick up some of that too. Pick up some of the color and soften those lines. Maybe do a little tapping, wet on wet, damp on damp, actually. I want to keep this as kind of loose as I can. So look how pretty that is already. And I might just darken this color underneath. So there I had way too much water on my brush. I didn't tap it off. And I'm going in with quite a dark value. I feel like we need a little bit of that dark value up in here. So that's another thing I try to watch is where are my colors leading the viewer's eye? Here's purples, maybe need a purple down here. Here's this red violet. Now maybe need another red violet up here. Because you can lead people through your painting with colors as well as the obvious direction of leaves and flowers and things. So I think I want to add that dark purple down here because I've got some dark purples here, but not so much down here. So I'm going to add one in right here. So it keeps my eye moving. Maybe one here, like that. And maybe even tuck in a tiny one there. Okay, I like that. Now let's go in and let's paint our leaves here. So I'm going to use a yellowy green and I'm going to make it a very light value. So again, 80% water to 20% pigment. And then you can tap off, but because this is a large area, I'm going to keep it quite a bit of paint on my brush because I want this to cover the whole leaf. You can almost even wet the leaf first and then drop in your color. That's another way to do it. I like both. And it gives that beautiful mottled M-O-T-T-L-E-D kind of look to your leaf. We could go in and add a little bit of that green, more of a tree green in your MeiLiang palette. And let that spread. That's where wet and the beauty of watercolors is so wonderful. It like literally does the work for me. I don't even have to do that much. All I'm doing is tapping in, and it takes what I put there and just spreads it around beautifully. Okay, and I might even add just the tiniest touch of yellow sienna or even yellow ochre, but be careful with that yellow ochre because it can be a little strong. I always love warming up my leaves. I think it's just so pretty to put some browns and things in there. It feels so authentic to me. There we go. So this is a lot of layering, a lot of glazes, and then I'm going to grab a tiny bit of my olive green, just a little bit, because I don't want to warm this up too much. But I will add in a tiny bit of the olive green, just maybe in here where it might be shadowed a little bit. Like that. Look how pretty that leaf is. Isn't that lovely? And that's, you know, that's not necessarily me doing some just amazing, beautiful job. That's really me trusting the watercolors and letting the watercolors do their thing. Right. A lot of times I will notice leaves at the tips kind of have some little burned pieces and so forth. And then once this dries, we'll go in and do some veins. So let's go ahead and move to our other one. Rinse my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and get it wet because I was having quite a fun time with that. I don't want puddles. I'm just glazing with a light wash of clear water. And I might even have some spots in here that I don't even completely fill with the water. So it's shiny right now. And then I'll go in just like I did here and just start dropping in some paint, letting the watercolors do the work for me. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit more. This is where I really enjoy watercolors so much. I love when I can just kind of throw watercolors on paper and it almost says, okay, thank you, I'll take it from here. And it steps in and it creates these beautiful blends and flowering colors. Oops. I said oops because I put my brush into more of my cad yellow, lemon yellow. So look at how pretty. Let me grab a little bit of that olive green. I don't want to get too dark, but look at how beautiful this is, and really quite simple. And I think you guys will be able to draw this as well. I always am up for sharing my drawings, but I know some of you have a hard time getting those printed out, so I try to do paintings where we can just draw as well. So I'm really liking that. Just dropping in some of that. Now, before this dries too much, I want to go in and do that branch here. I'm going to actually do a little bit of brown for that branch. And I want it to even blend and kind of merge with my leaf because I think that's kind of cool. I do that a lot with my flowers. And if I wanted to blend a little bit more there, I'll just dab in with some water and let it blend. Let me grab my Van Dyke brown, which is the dark brown. And look how warm and earthy and yummy that is. Okay. Just tapping in some water drops there. And we're about done with, or I'm about done with this. I could always go in if I want to pick out a few grapes and darken them up a bit. So maybe with, let's try a little bit more of that red violet. And let's maybe pick this one out here. So with watercolors, that's really something fun about them. You can continue to add layers. And pulling and picking out some of those layers. I want to darken up some of those inside that are tucked behind. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, and I want to soften that edge right there. So I'm just adding some water drops. Just happened to notice that. Okay, so to get kind of some shadowy grapes in there, I'm going to take my purple and let's add it to some of the brown or the green. Let's do it with the green, actually. So I'm going to take my green and take some of that purple, because remember, they're complementary, contrasting colors, purple and greens. So when you mix them together, it's going to create this beautiful shadowy look. Look at how pretty that is. And I'm going to go in and use that on some of these grapes tucked inside here. And it's going to give us this really gorgeous shadow color of the grapes. It also brings coherency with the leaves because they're green. So just going in here. Can you see that lovely shadowy color? A mixture of the green and the purple. Maybe right here. Just kind of tucking in. I love adding my flower colors, or in this case, my grape colors with the leaves. You could even tap in some of that purple like that to your leaves. It would be really pretty. And again, it brings that coherency of your grapes and your leaves. So I want to darken up this one just a bit. So let's grab some of that red violet, and I'm going to just give that another glaze. And then I feel like a lot of these are kind of the same color. So let's just darken some of those up. Another glaze. And look at the difference that makes. So you're really pulling and pushing back some of those colors. I'm going to make some of that purple with the green again for that muted color, and tuck that on in between. And it gives us those deep, dark colors inside that really draw your eye in. So I'm looking at how these colors are leading my eye. I've got purples kind of leading. I've got these red violets. And then I've got some of those greens. I'm going to add some of those fun little twisties on that you see on grapes. And how I'm going to do this is, normally I hold my brush pretty close to the ferrule because I can get in close, but I'm going to scoot my hand back a bit, and I'm lifting my hand up now because it's going to free up my hand to move a little bit more. So I might even anchor near my elbow here, and using the tip of my brush, something like that. Now that looks too green to me, so I'm going to just add in the tiniest tapping in with my darker green, just for some interest, maybe even some brown. Let's grab a little brown. and touch in because it's kind of wet still. And look how lovely those colors are. Browns and greens. And then I'm also going to wash, rinse my brush and just, I want to soften that line a little bit. Now, once this is dry, I will go in and do some little veins, but I think I'm quite happy with this. I don't want to overwork any of this too much. And I typically will try to have, so this was my color swatches. So what I will do is try to, let's see if I can do this, have 3 different values of that color. So this was my darkest, this was my mid value, and that's my light. So I try to incorporate all 3 values of all my colors into my paintings, just for that wonderful interest that I get. I'm going to do another curly Q, so pick up some of that green again, and let's see, where should we put this other one? Maybe we should, let's see, have this coming out down here. A little one, maybe one here. And now I'll go in with the darker olive green, just like I did while this is wet. And just tap in and let that spread because it's wet. And then next I'll go in with that beautiful brown. Let me add a little bit more water. There we go, because the more water, the more it's gonna spread in with that water that's already there. And look how pretty that is. Again, that's the watercolor doing its thing. That's not like I'm some amazing talent. If you get to use these watercolor techniques and you get to know what the watercolors can do, you can create anything. So I feel like this is pretty dry. Let me give it just a really quick shot. Excuse me, with my heat gun, just real quick. Just to dry it a bit. And now I'll just go in and do a couple veins. So I love this brush, and I designed it so I could get these thicker areas, and then I could get these little tiny points. So I'm just gonna mix a olive green here. We could use that. There's a little bit of purple in there. And I don't want to get too defined because I'm not a real detail person. Like that. And then maybe out here. Just a few. I want to leave a lot to the imagination of the viewer, but giving it a tiny bit. Just for some interest. Then maybe here, again, not too much. Of course, you can add in as much as you want. That you take creative license with that. Just for me, I don't like to put too much, and I'm getting this thin line. If you haven't watched some of my practice, like thin and thick lines and brush strokes, take a peek at that. It might help you with how to get those thin lines. You want to hold your brush up and down and just the lightest pressure. The other thing I had also noticed about these fun little flower leaves is they're quite squiggly. So I've got some main leaves there, and then I'm just going to do some squiggles like that. So not too much. And again, I could go in here and even darken up some more if I wanted to use a darker value. Let's just do that, just to show you how this can really pop. I feel like I want to use that purpley blue though. Let's see, where is that purple blue? think this was more, yeah, that's a darker purple, but let's just add a little bit of that Prussian blue in there. And darken it up. There we go. So that is a really purpley blue. And I'm going to go in and just pull out a few of these grapes. Another favorite way for me to paint grapes is adding green grapes in. I think it's really pretty when you mix purple and green grapes. I lived in a city called Temecula, and we had lots of grape vineyards around there, and it was so much fun. Such a beautiful area. I even had grapes in my garden. So see how that really popped out? Maybe make this one at the end a little bit darker. And that will pull your eye down from this blue down into here, so it doesn't kind of leave you hanging. Maybe do one back in here, a little bit of negative painting, a little bit of negative painting here. Hold on, let's do just a tiny bit more. Oop. Really get a dark color there. Kind of like those. I don't want to touch those too much. There we go. And then give this one more little quick glaze. There we go. And I think I'm done. I hope you guys will give this a try. I think it's relatively an easier one to draw. Just have fun and use big grapes, small grapes, leave white spaces. And your leaves, I kind of showed you how to do the 3 points and then join them. And we did some wet and wet here. And most importantly, always sign your painting. So I'm just going to sign mine right there. And I'm done. All right, everybody, thanks so much. And I hope you give this a try. I will link all of my supplies down in the description. I do receive a small little percentage from Amazon if you use those links. And to be honest, some of these you could even add some fun metallics I think would be really great because I love my metallics. And thank you so much for being here, everybody. Happy painting.